I'm Steve Robinson, and I'll be your chair tonight. And we'll start off with our land acknowledgement. On October 2nd, 2023, we acknowledge that this sacred land on which Smiths Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We are also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smiths Falls. We are mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, being mindful of generations to come. So I'll call the meeting to order at 5:01 p.m. And approval of the agenda.
Mr.
Yes.
Chair, if we could remove item 9.1 in camera item a litigation matter and defer that to a future committee of the whole, please.
We certainly can. All right, so can I have a motion to...
agenda, Mr. Chair, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Can I have I've got a recommended motion that the October 2nd, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting agenda be approved as amended. Councillor Brennan and seconded by Councillor Miller. All in favor? Approved. Now move on to disclosure of pecuniary interest and or conflict of interest and general nature thereof. Seeing none, okay. We had no minutes because this is a special meeting, so no delegations. And I believe there are no CAO or director's reports tonight. Yes?
That's correct, Mr. Chair. I would like to just comment, it may be worth noting, the reason we're having this special meeting is the province have given us a very tight deadline for the housing recommendations. So that's why we're having tonight's special meeting. And given that it's a special meeting, we'll withhold verbal reports until next week.
Okay. And thank you. And we have no committee of the whole consent reports. So I guess we're going to, I'm going to need a motion to move in camera. Okay, Councillor Quinn, seconded by Councillor McKenna. All in favor? Let's go. All right. You,
I appreciate that.
Hello. Hi, Carl. Hey. How are you? Good. How are you? Your first day as manager? Yes. Fancy new parking spot. Gotta like that.
Yeah, I didn't even know it was there. It was clearly a gag.
Is it gonna be there tomorrow?
No, I took the slide down. I didn't want to create any confusion, so. But yes, there is some gag related to sign. developments that the province has authority to implement, either directly or in legislative changes affecting municipalities. A few of them require some outside help, either through liaisons with higher education or federal funding sources. As of last week, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing has indicated that the province has completed or partially completed work on 23 of the initiatives. Council has seen many of these initiatives through Planning Act or Development Charge changes that have been reported to Council in 2022, the biggest ones being Bill 109 and Bill 23. Those implemented several of the task force's recommendations. On September 15th, the newly appointed Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing sent heads of council a letter asking for advice on the top 5 task force recommendations to prioritize, and for each municipality to provide these ranked choices, and they've asked for them by October 16th. In the Minister's letter, we are asked to focus our recommended actions on ones that are applicable to and would positively benefit our own community. Development Services staff reviewed the task force recommendations and identified 7 specific recommendations that we feel would be particularly appropriate for the province to investigate or pursue. Our recommended shortlist is presented in the report in the order in which they are presented in the task force report. However, Council is asked to rank their top 5. The recommendations that we have highlighted include encouraging or incentivizing municipalities to increase density in areas with excess school capacity, require minor delegation of site plan or minor variances, simplify planning legislation and policy documents, require appellants to promptly seek leave to appeal to local planning appeals tribunals and demonstrate that an appeal has merit, provide additional resources to the planning appeals tribunal, as well as mediators in order to achieve faster resolutions, legislate clear province-wide definition of affordable housing to create certainty and predictability, and further investigate the inclusionary zoning tool that some large municipalities have around transit stations and whether it may be helpful in other contexts, such as ours, to promote the creation of affordable units in development supportive contexts. So looking at giving us tools. Each of these recommendations, if implemented thoughtfully and appropriately, have the potential to unlock and enable housing supply. So the task force report did not get into details about implementation. That certainly comes later. There's a lot to consider on each of these, but I think those recommendations and the ones outlined in the report are ones that certainly have the potential to move us in the direction we want to. Appendix C of the report contained 5 recommendations regarding government surplus land. I like most of these recommendations as they recognize the partnership role that other levels of government have in this important item. However, they did not make our shortlist as there's limited supply of government land in Smith Falls that can be made available for housing. Certainly in other communities that would be a much bigger factor. Likewise, several recommendations regarding development around major transit stations have real merit, however, would not be applicable here. The province has also indicated that recommendations regarding increasing supports and apprenticeship opportunities for the skilled trades have been fulfilled or are underway. That is something that we welcome. Anecdotally, we've been made aware of a few situations where approved developments have been constructed slower than expected due to supply chain, labor, and other unexpected costs. While there's little we can do here at Town Hall, certainly raising awareness is helpful. At this time, staff seek Council's direction and ranking on 5 of the actions contained in the staff report or elsewhere in the task force recommendation, and these recommendations will be conveyed to Minister Calandra for his consideration. So I've done some ranking myself, but certainly I welcome Council's direction, and I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Carl. Discussion. Councilor Miller.
Thank you, and thanks for your thorough report, Manager Granke. I struggled with the top 5 list. I think there's a lot of merit in most of these points, and was wishing you had shared your top 5 so we could take your opinion on this. You are the expert, so I'd be interested in yours. I did make a top 3 list, which included the Appendix B 2nd recommendation, Appendix B 4th recommendation, and recommendation 22. For what that's worth, that's 3, not 5.
Councilor Brennan.
Yeah, thanks. I'm with Councilor Miller on this. I'd like to know what you think, but they all have merit. The one, number 7, In terms of areas with excess school capacity, does that apply to Smith Falls? I'm just wondering if any of the schools have excess capacity. Do we know?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I appreciate Councillor Miller's suggestions. Those are the three. Her top three are on my list. But the ranking that I presented is number one. Simplify planning legislation and policy documents. That's a very high level recommendation. We don't know how, but I think it's fair to say that the planning is generally in moving in a direction that's more complicated. And I think what's harder for staff, councils, and our partners in the development industry is that the rules are often changing as well. So that's creating a little bit of uncertainty. So my recommendation is that be our first priority, with the caveat that when we're simplifying the rules, we also leave them in place for some time to allow everyone to catch up and get accustomed. My second rank was requiring appellants to promptly seek leave to appeal to local planning appeals. So this hasn't come our way in Smith Falls. We've been fairly lucky in terms of not dealing with costly or difficult appeals, but certainly if there's a mechanism early on to, I wouldn't support, from my position, I wouldn't support removing the appeals process. I think it is a fundamental and integral part of the development process. It creates credibility across the board, but I think appeals need to be screened, and vexatious or frivolous appeals that have little merit should be opportunities for those to be removed would speed up and free up resources to deal with the ones that do have significant merit. So I think that's a helpful one. On a related note, my third ranked suggestion is additional resources to the Planning Appeals Tribunal. Again, along the same lines, make appeals more efficient. And I think if there is the opportunity to appoint mediators or other professionals who can help move something to a resolution without a costly adjudication, I think that's something worth exploring. Again, these are high level recommendations, but things that we can look at. The inclusionary zoning tool made my list as number 4, and that's more because I'm interested in exploring whether there's an opportunity and potentially a tool here for the municipality to consider. So larger municipalities have the ability to require the provision of affordable units in large developments around transit stations, and there's reasons for that. It creates an incentive to or an ability to create development that doesn't necessarily require an automobile, because you're close to transit, you can move around a little bit easier. But I'm not convinced that this isn't a tool that wouldn't be useful in smaller urban areas, maybe even rural areas. And I think if it's done in a way that doesn't deter development as well, that we can use the tool if we have the ability to craft something thoughtful. I'm very interested to explore that, to see if that's something that may be of interest to council. So that made my my top 5 in the 4th spot, just because I feel that there could be something there. I don't know exactly what it would look like at this point, but I think that's well worth exploring. And the school capacity, that made my my 5th spot, and it comes down to details of implementation. Areas, neighborhoods as they turn over, as the original residents who sometimes have kids, the kids move away, then it's the neighborhood declines in population, and then eventually that turns over, and so the demographics of a neighborhood change, which of course impact school enrollment in that area. But I think it speaks philosophically to the approach that development should be encouraged that makes the most efficient use of services that are there. With respect to the Smith Falls context to Councillor Brendan's question, I don't have information from the last year or two. We've certainly seen a very significant amount of development over the last couple of years. So I don't know if the capacity that we had a few years ago in our schools is still there. I think we had we're probably fairly close to where we wanted to be in terms of capacity. I know through certain changes to moving grade 7 and 8 into more urbanized centers and a few other. I know looking at some of the rationalizing of rural schools, I think that's created a little bit of enrollment stability in the town schools. I'm not sure where we're at capacity wise at present. Certainly we look forward to the school board reaching out to us as they do from time to time and updating us. But I think just in a broad sense, I think that's an opportunity that we can look at. So those are my 5 recommendations, but I certainly welcome council to pick the 5.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
want.
one more, just to add on that, and I agree with you, and I think there's development opportunities near some schools, i.e. Chimo, of course, the new Catholic school over on Herald. And I agree with your assessment, and I just wanted your opinion on recommendation 15, which is the requirement to mandatory delegation of site plan approvals and minor variances. To my mind, we already have sort of delegated some of that to staff to do, and that would be the developments over in off Ferreira, which is a more or less kept coming back. It's the same over and over. So the staff do that automatically now, right? Yes. So the only part of that, it is useful, I think, in some cases for a minor variance or a site plan approval for a planning committee to look at it, especially when it's a larger development where there's aesthetics involved. And if you have a bunch of people here that are worried about a development in their neighborhood, then questions can be asked, and the staff have been great and recently in responding to that. But you get that public element there. So for the one, the first one where it's a subdivision plan that is going forward, it's been approved, and then as the phases go through, then of course site plan should be an automatic thing. For the bigger ones, I would prefer that the planning committee look at it with staff and then public input and that sort of thing. But I think is that recommendation, would that apply to the bigger developments?
Yes.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the province has gone part way already. So through Bill 109, all site plan approvals have been delegated to staff. So the municipal council no longer has an approval role on site plan applications. So we continue to bring larger site plan applications to the Planning Advisory Committee as an advisory role. We feel that's important for the public eye to continue to be on that. We have councillors on that committee as well who may be getting questions about what's going on. So I think it's important that from our perspective procedurally that is part of the process, but it is not an approval process. So that is a decision that has been made for us through Bill 109. So I think the other half of that recommendation, the Housing Task Force report related to minor variances. So I think we've been the Planning Advisory Committee has an approval role for minor variances, and I think we've been very fortunate that those have tended to go quite smoothly in terms of public feedback and rapid decision making. But there is the possibility, and this has happened in some circumstances, where a minor variance application to accommodate increased density or some other zoning relief that allows additional units gets bogged down in a local squabble, and sometimes that results in, again, this hasn't happened in Smith Falls, but sometimes that results in an unpredictable outcome, appeals, and that has extended the process. So this recommendation, which did not make my top 5, but is presented here, this recommendation, if implemented, would delegate approval authority for either some or all minor variances. The four Planning Act tests would still need to be met. I think Councillor Brennan was absolutely right on that these are also, at the end of the day, council is elected to make decisions on the zoning bylaw and certainly has a say in that. So I think the recommendation comes down to finding the proper balance between making, at least as it relates, we don't have that option with a site plan process anymore. That was half of that recommendation was already implemented through Bill 109. So we're looking at the other half of the recommendation through site plan, through minor variances. There is the option to delegate approval authority to those, perhaps if there's some sort of screening criteria, or delegate some approval but not all, or at least define what's delegated. And presumably they would still need to meet the 4 tests that would be assessed by staff and approved by staff, if not the committee. So I think, does that answer your question, Councillor?
Yeah, and I think that we still have discretion in terms of getting advice from a planning advisory committee, although, right?
Yes, I think,
Yeah.
through you, Mr. Chair, I think through the process, we would certainly, I think the planning advisory committee is a very important body that provides a critical review element, and it would be up to us and council and the committee to define their role in that process. But certainly I'm not interested in replacing the work that they do.
Good, thanks. I agree with your top 5.
Mayor Paco.
Thank you. I'm going to start with 5, work my way towards number 1. So at 5, I would say the recommendation number 22, simplify planning legislation and policy documents. So I think there's merit in trying to cut red tape and process, streamline if at all possible. Number 4 would be the recommendation 26, and basically provide an LPAT with opportunity to dismiss quickly frivolous appeals. I think they can consume time, they create delays, could lead to some developments not even going forward, even though we have not had to deal with it to this point. My number 3 would be additional resources for LPAT. I think that's also important, again, even though we have not had to deal with it. Someday we will likely have to. My number 2 is province-wide definition of affordable housing. That is tailored to each individual community or region. And what's affordable here, what's affordable in some places is not going to be affordable here. And number 1, and it's one we discussed at the Housing Advisory Committee, as well as the task force, would be number 4, which relates to possibility of inclusionary zoning. And we hear talk about 15-minute cities and access to transit and being walkable and active transportation. We are a 15-minute city. You can go from one end of our community to another in no time at all in a vehicle. You can walk around town. We're very accessible community from that standpoint. So that tying inclusionary zoning to transit prohibits us from being able to implement that policy. And so the other thing I struggle with all of this, with the entire report, not your report, but the provincial report, is I don't see really any of it making a significant difference here. Most of it's tied to building homes for homeowners. And if you look at the 2021 census, 65% of our population has a combined family income of less than $80,000. And if you're at the top end of that, if you have a family income of $80,000 today, and you go to buy a home and you have $40,000 down, you can buy a $400,000 home. Any home being built today, there's no homes being built for $400,000. So no matter what changes happen here, it's not going to create more. Not going to create a lot of affordable home ownership for the majority of our population. It doesn't speak at all, of course, to the challenges on the purpose-built rental side. And so that's where I struggle with it. It's tailored. It seems like it's tailored for large centers with higher incomes. Trying to get more homes built faster is important. Has been a problem here. Of course, going through our building and planning departments, they approved 390 new residential units last year, another 75 so far this year. And speaking to developers, things move pretty smoothly through here. So I think we're dealing with issues that aren't really present here. So I appreciate the opportunity to provide feedback, but the broader feedback is these changes will not make much of a difference in our community. Thank you. Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Grinke, I have some questions first, if that's okay. When you talked about surplus government land, is that provincial and federal? Or is it just provincial? I'm assuming it is, it's their legislation.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the task force report doesn't specify provincial, but I read that to mean provincial since they're focusing on the areas within their authority.
Thank you. And there was going to be a target letter sent out to municipalities on what their new housing target could be. Have we received anything like that? I know it was for the larger centers, but at some point there was going to be incentives for municipalities if they met or exceeded targets. Is that in our wheelhouse?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I haven't seen it yet. Certainly, I know that the first priority was looking at larger municipalities and changes to planning legislation require reporting from identified larger municipalities as well. That hasn't come down our way yet.
And my final question before I'll give you my list is, I know the minister asked us to prioritize our top 5 on his list. If there was a recommendation that we had that isn't on the list, we could, nothing preventing us from adding one back to them. They're saying, please comment on what we've given you, but is there something you wish was in there that we could have commented on or recommended to them? And that's unfair for me to, I'm not looking for that answer right this minute, but.
Yes,
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So fascinating question, and I'm not sure we fully contemplated it, but I think the opinion and the observations that the mayor just made would be important to capture in a diplomatic way, of course, because the essence of this report is affordability, and it may not have hit all those nails. So I think that's fair game if council was supportive.
Either a covering letter or something, or adding a box in the bottom saying, this is also really important for you to hear from us. So I took, if I went the opposite way rather than number 1, I took out what I didn't think was, and then I ended up with 5. So I took out 7, the one regarding density around schools. The same, I think it's not as relevant. We're gonna build everywhere we can. And I took out 22, that plain language one, because I think the government, if they need to be told to simplify processes or use better language, and I thought this was the government that did get rid of red tape, and they've got a committee looking at that. So I assumed they were going to do that anyway. So I took those off and left the other 5 in no particular order. That's my 2 cents worth, Mr. Grinke.
Councillor Quinn.
Thank you. This has been a struggle, but what has just been said here now, I think is very, very strong. We need to look at our municipality and what the economic standard is here, and it's not the same somewhere else. So we have to work within those confines. And I think that's really strong that message is sent with this. As far as the recommendations go, I'm quite in favor of what has been said, the recommendations that have been approved, because they're all important. So it was very difficult to narrow it down. The one thing though that I think needs to be stressed and stressed and stressed is cutting all this red tape, because I know people right now that are trying to build or add on to their homes or whatever, and it takes a long time to get through all the red tape. So that needs to be eliminated. And the other question I have is, do you have enough staff to tackle all this? Because this is a lot of work.
Go ahead.
So thank you. I'll defer to CIO Morris.
CAO Morris.
So I think that's a really good endorsement of what we've heard around the table. So that's very helpful. In terms of staff, I think we need to see what the province comes up with in the end.
Okay.
I would submit that the red tape here is probably lesser so than in other places. So I'm not sure that there's a lot that the town can do to reduce red tape. Certainly not having, delegated authority for site plan approval. That saves time. There's no question, right? But I think we'll need to see what comes out of the whole process and then make a determination about staffing. But it's certainly part of a larger discussion we're having corporately about capacity to maintain services as we're growing. And the mayor mentioned all the housing starts. Well, we send a tax bill to each one, we pick up their garbage, we plow their street, we do all those things. So we're having an internal discussion about corporate capacity, and planning or development services will be part of that discussion.
Because this is big. This is big, and I mean, it's all wonderful to sit here and say, okay, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, we're gonna do something else, but if everyone's running around totally ragged and can't accomplish everything, then we've lost. That's why I'm saying, we need to watch and make sure that we do have enough staff to be able to handle it. Maybe there's other areas within the town that can lend some help here, but I hear what Sia was saying, that we have to kind of see how this plays out. So, thank you.
Councillor McGuire, have you got anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I definitely agree with Mayor Panko's comments. That 5 was my 5 too. But I concur with the kind of consensus that these might be great for Toronto problems, but I don't see them really tailored to the issues that I see at Smith Falls. So I support having that addendum at the bottom of just indicating that fact. So.
Thank you. I didn't pick the first 2 recommendations. I eliminated number 7 and number 15. The other 5 were the most important to me. After I only had 3 in the beginning, but I do have 5 now. So, like that's where I stand. What I'd like to get is, we were jumping around so much. I'm just gonna go to each recommendation and, for show of hands, see how many people support that. Okay. So recommendation number 7. How many are in support of that? That's the first one. Okay. Recommendation number 15. That's the second one. 1. And number 22. So that's 5. And recommendation 26.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just wondering if we should poll Councillor McGuire.
Oh, how about you, Councillor McGuire, on those first 2?
Sorry, I'm just trying to pull that up. I only got one screen tonight.
Okay. Okay, so when you get it up, it'll be the first 3 so far. Actually, maybe I should just ask you to go through them all while I've got you on the line.
So was there?
What I'm looking for is which ones you're in favor of.
I'm sorry. I'm just trying to figure out. Was there a tie on the first 2 or?
No, there wasn't. There was nobody on the first one. There was 1 on the second one. There were 5 on the third.
Okay. Yeah. No. The schools. That's not.
Okay.
Sorry. This is freezing. But no. Yeah. If there's the first 2 definitely are not. I think. Yeah. The third one that. I agree with that.
Okay. And Number 26, it's, would be the next one. Is your screen unfrozen?
Yeah, how many votes do we have for that one?
I just figured I'd get them all, the rest of them from you while I've got you on the line. And then
Okay, is there 1, 2, 3, 4? I think there's only 4 other ones, right?
Yeah.
So if without supporting the first 2, then the 5 others come in.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so.
Sorry,
That's easy.
Thanks.
That seems very common.
Same as everything.
All right, well, that's pretty much the same as everyone else, so, all right. So the first 2, we won't recommend, but the last 5 we will. So,
Do we need to rank them?
do you want them in order of ranking?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the minister's letter did request that they be
Okay.
ranked.
So number 22, we have 6 people. And then we've got 4, 6, 7 for that one. Everybody agrees with the last 4, right?
Yeah.
So 7, 7, 7. All right. So number 1 would be number 26, number 30, Appendix B in the second, and fourth, because all 7 agree with that. The recommendation 22 would be the next one with 6 votes, and then that's it, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah.
So just to,
Recommendation 22 had 6 votes.
yes.
Okay. The rest of them all had 7. 26, 30, Appendix B, and Appendix B.
I think the minister's looking for us to rank those in priority.
Mr. Chair?
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, quite frankly, we've agreed on 5. The ranking, given the other sentiment about the relevancy to Smith Falls, is irrelevant to me too. I mean, I don't know that it's going to be looked at that. So whatever you guys think, I'll go with.
Okay. We'll go in reverse order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Sure. Good enough.
Sure, that's good.
Everybody agree to that? All right, perfect. You have your direction.
Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. And I guess we're going to stay with you again on the development agreement report for Russell Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just this one will be brief. The Planning Advisory Committee last year approved a severance of a lot on Russell Street. It's a semi-detached home that was where both sides were merged on title through operation of law since they fell into common ownership. The application seeks to divide them, and one of the conditions of severance approval is that the applicant works with the Public Works Department to ensure that both the severed and retained lot have their own independent servicing connections. So the development agreement in this case outlines the obligations between for the town and for the property owner to ensure that's completed. The recommendation from staff is that a bylaw be passed authorizing the execution of the development agreement as a partial fulfillment of the severance approval conditions. The draft agreement has been reviewed in detail between planning staff, public works staff, and the applicant, and everybody's comfortable with the wording that's proposed. So we seek council's authorization to proceed with bylaw.
Any discussion? Okay. It's moved. Committee appointments.
Thank you. As council's aware, we've had an application from Mr. Ted Outerbridge to sit on the Heritage House Museum Advisory Board. There is room on this committee. It does hold 5 to 11 members. That includes member of council, which is Councillor Brennan. Currently, I believe there's 5 people. This will bring the complement up to 6. So with council's concurrence, we'd like to bring a motion forward this evening to formally appoint Mr. Outerbridge.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. I just want to welcome Ted to the committee that he's been attending for the last 6 months, and he's a real asset to the town, and he's a history buff, as we all know. So welcome.
Anyone else? All right. So we'll move on. Is there any committee, board, or external organization updates? No. No information listing or correspondence items. No notice of motions. Okay. So I guess it's time for adjournment. So I have a recommended motion that committee adjourn its proceedings at 6:20 p.m. and stand so adjourned until the next duly called committee meeting. Can I have a mover? Councillor McKenna and seconded by Councillor Brennan. All in favor? Approved.
You want to do my
Brief pause. Councillor McGuire, you have a
Good job.
doing well. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of Smith Falls Town Council for Monday, October 2nd. I will open the meeting with our land acknowledgement. On October 2nd, 2023, we acknowledge the sacred land on which Smith Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We're also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smith Falls. We are mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, and being mindful of generations to come. I will call the meeting to order at 6:24 p.m. Approval of the agenda is with Councillor McGuire, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McKenna that the October 2nd, 2023 council meeting agenda be approved as circulated.
Thank you. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Ask for disclosure of pecuniary interest and or conflict of interest and general nature thereof. Seeing none. Any amendments to the agenda? I anticipate none. So approval of the agenda is with Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Quinn, that the minutes of the September 5th, 2023 and September 11th, 2023 council meetings be approved as circulated.
Thank you. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, moving ahead with reports and updates. Councillor Robinson.
Well, thank you. Just quick couple updates. On September 20th, I attended the Chamber of Commerce breakfast meeting. There was lots of boat traffic in the basin this year, and the mooring numbers were up. The cantina was a little late getting up and running. They didn't actually get it in operation until the 3rd of August, but the response was very good. There was still traffic flowing through the park the week following Labor Day, but traffic and business died off drastically after that. The cantina's last day of operation this year was Thursday, September 21st. The Chamber Golf Tournament was still a success, despite not having nearly as many teams as in previous years. And they're looking at having their annual general meeting and business awards at the end of November, and the date will be announced later. And one further thing, we had a special planning advisory committee meeting on September 28th to allow a minor variance to build a proposed garage addition at the Nissan dealership at 211 Lombard Street. And it was unanimously carried, so they can go ahead and get that work done. And that's my report.
Thank you. Councillor McKenna.
Yes, Your Worship. As you know, I'm the municipality's representative on the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, with which Smith Falls partners with Lanark County to develop. There was a 4-year plan. It's expired, and we're developing a new plan. The co-chair of that is, of course, Deputy Chief Empey. So there's going to be a consultation on the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan for Council coming up in late October or early November. It will be in the evening, and it will be virtual. I'll give you that date as soon as it comes out. And they're really asking, and if anybody's unfamiliar, you can just look up Lanark Smith Falls Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. Critical document, and the police services boards, of course, will be the other group that will be the key informants. There will be a public consultation another time, but this is for police services boards and councils across Lanark County and Smith Falls. So I'll fill you in. Stay tuned.
Thank you. Any further reports?
No.
Okay. Councillor Miller, you had some?
Thank you. The Smith Falls and District Arts Council held their annual general meeting last week, and they reported on a really strong year. They've doubled their membership over the last year, and they've hosted 11 successful events. They elected Joanne Moret as their new board chair for the coming year. So I'd like to thank the Arts Council for their great work and for always celebrating our strong and vibrant arts community. I also attended a number of community events in the last few weeks. It's been a busy fall so far, including the Smith Falls Chamber of Commerce Golf Tournament Dinner, a fundraiser for Bailey Anderson and her next Olympic run, the Lombardy Barn Dance fundraiser for our neighbors, the Heritage House Pizza Night fundraiser, the Curated Finds grand opening, the DBA's Girls Night Out, Canopy Growth's grand opening, and the United Way Golf Tournament lunch. And I know all of my colleagues around the Horseshoe have had an equally busy fall, but just a shout out to our community groups who are doing such great work. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan?
Yeah, just a couple of things. On the weekend was a busy weekend, beautiful weekend. And I want to really give a shout out to staff for organizing what we called Bark in the Park, which was the 10th anniversary of the Smith Falls Dog Park, which I was involved in getting going with my wife, and staff did a really, really great job of putting the word out, getting the vet was there, Laws was there, and some other people, and the dog park users really, really appreciated. Councillor Robinson helped me on the barbecue. So a big shout out to Julia Crowder at our staff because she did a great job. Really appreciate it. It was a real fun day. On the next day, the Heritage House Museum had their Fall Fest, and I must say there was about 500 people that showed up yesterday at that, and Gary Lackey and I barbecued, and they're doing a really, really great job over there. They're doing, as Halloween's coming up, they're doing ghost tours on October 11 and 12. They're having a paranormal investigation on the 13th. That's Friday the 13th. I understand that's sold out. Now, I had a challenge for my council colleagues. There's a community pumpkin carving contest beginning October 21st until, of course, the 31st. And so my challenge to my colleagues is to go pick up a pumpkin. They're partnering with Miller's Farms, so you can get a pumpkin there or buy your own pumpkin and get it in there before the 31st. And I'd like to see at least a pumpkin from each one of you. And I didn't win last year, but I think most of my colleagues at that time participated in it. So that's my challenge. And finally, they're having October 20th and 21st and 27th and 28th Haunted Heritage House, which is always a scream. So I encourage everybody to go to that. Those are my reports. Thanks.
Mine should be a pretty scary mayor at the Heritage House during those events.
Yes.
Anyway, thank you. A few reports myself, along with all my colleagues. September 21st, I was pleased to have the opportunity to tour the new Canadian headquarters of Canopy Growth at 99 Lawrence Street, which is now known as 100 Drive. Encouraging to see the former bottling facility and adjacent regional distribution center in action. And although Canopy has, I guess, reduced its footprint and employee count in recent years, it remains our largest employer with a workforce of 350 people and still occupy 250,000 square feet in our community. Thanks to Canopy Growth President of Canadian Operations, David Patterson, for his leadership and Canopy's commitment to Smith Falls. On the 22nd, like some other of my colleagues, I attended the Pizza Night fundraiser at the Heritage House. So again, it's great to see new and innovative ideas emerging from the staff and the board of the Heritage House. And every time we turn around, there's something exciting happening there. So definitely kudos and praise to everyone involved. On the 23rd of September, I was pleased to be able to cut the ribbon and officially open Curated Finds Inspired by You on William Street East. This beautiful space is some inspiring home decor items, providing space for numerous artisans, artists, crafters to display their talent. So congratulations to Sue, Myrna, and Arlene for bringing their talents and of course their passion to our community. On September 28th, I attended the regular board meeting of the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority, and the board received an update on the status of Category 3 cost apportioning agreements, granted approval to request an extension from the province to complete these agreements. So essentially, every municipality in the catchment area has to essentially approve an agreement with the RVCA for these Category 3 programs. So they've attended about half of the municipalities. They've had meetings and approvals. They're lining up meetings with the other half of the municipalities, and they'll be coming up to a future committee of the whole, probably late October to November, depends when they can get scheduled, but it's got to get done in the very near future. And what else was there here? On Friday the 29th, the Police Service Board met. We received a presentation from Deputy Chief Empey regarding the development of a new strategic plan. Numerous opportunities for public engagement will be held and communicated later this month as to the dates and locations. And on the weekend, on Saturday, I was happy to stop by Bark at the Park, and I want to commend Councillor Brennan, not necessarily for what happened on the weekend, because it was a great celebration, but for bringing that to council back in, it was almost 2013, it might have even been a year earlier, before we found a location and got it all underway. But I think you had come across one somewhere and thought it'd be a great addition to our town. And I couldn't add up the number of dogs and I guess dog parents and families who have had such enjoyment at the dog park. And really, it's an attraction for our community. If you've got a dog and your community is a dog park, that's where you're going to live. So thank you, Councillor Brennan, for being a leader with that all the way through. And on Saturday evening, along with some other members of council, I was honored to participate in the town's National Day of Truth and Reconciliation sunset ceremony. It was a deeply meaningful event as everyone in attendance had the opportunity to hear the truth about Indian residential schools from both former student as well as 2 local citizens who are descendants of residential school survivors. And we were all moved by Smith Falls citizens Charlene Catchball and Tim Bisayan, who spoke openly about their experiences growing up in families impacted by the negative effects of residential schools. We're also very fortunate to have had Bernard Nelson speak about his own horrific experiences growing up in a residential school. His willingness to speak from the heart, share the truth that everyone needs to hear and understand will forever be remembered by everyone there. As Canadians, we all need to commit to the understanding we need to advance reconciliation in meaningful, long-lasting ways. And Saturday's ceremony was an important step in the right direction. We're also grateful to Flora Riley, Betty Lou Kemp, and Hudson Majori for their performance of Flora's original song, Our Indigenous Children, a tribute to the residential school children who were never able to return home. Thank you to all the town staff involved in making Saturday's event so meaningful and memorable. And that's it for my reports. I've got a couple of announcements and proclamations. Sorry? Oh, sorry. Councillor McGuire, do you have any reports? That's it for my reports.
I'll hold off tonight just with the technology.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Thank you. Okay, a few things. We have a student counselor program. And although it was in existence for a number of years prior to the pandemic, we've struggled with it the last couple of years, but we're launching this attached poster. We're appealing to students of our local high schools to apply to be a student counselor for the balance of this school year. We hire to get new ones every school year. October 6th is the deadline for submissions. Additionally, Smith Falls for All next meeting is scheduled for October 12th at 9 a.m. Of course, everyone is welcome. I've talked to actually a couple of people recently who are interested in joining that committee, so we should have a broader committee as we move forward. And then we have Local Government Week coming up, October 16th to 23rd, the poster here. So there's a lot of things happening that week. The first is going to be happening on the Monday morning. On October 16th, we will be moving our council meeting to SFDCI, or from 9 to approximately 11 o'clock that morning. We did this back in 2013 or 14, so we're going to be excited to be back. As well, we have an essay contest. We know that the grade 5 and 6 students have an interest in local government. It's part of their curriculum. So we're asking them to write an essay. What does Smith Falls mean to you? And what would Smith Falls look like if you made all the decisions? So deadline for submissions is October 20th at noon. Winners will be announced on the 30th, and they'll be asked to attend a council meeting where we'll make a presentation to them. So essays can be dropped off at Town Hall or emailed to kcostello@smithfalls.ca. And look for this week on our town social media and website. As well as part of Local Government Week, our staff will be hosting a job fair at the SFDCI cafeteria, showcasing municipal jobs and careers, and a variety of staff will have booths there. I'll be able to talk about what they do, the schooling required to get there, so a great opportunity to build our future workforce. And then on October 20th from 9 to 10 a.m., be coffee, come have coffee with council. Get a chance to see our new council chambers, an opportunity to interact with members of council in ways maybe people have not done before.
Or tea.
And tea,
yeah.
Yes, thank you. Maybe some snacks too, maybe some donuts or some Timbits or something, I guess. Okay, I also have a couple of proclamations this evening. First is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, October 2023. Whereas the town of Smith Falls supports the rights of every citizen to live free of domestic violence, and whereas domestic violence affects all people regardless of geography, race, age, ethnicity, gender, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, or economic background. And whereas domestic violence is a public health issue that causes significant trauma and impacts the physical, mental, and emotional outcomes of people, communities, and societies. Whereas we all have an obligation to do everything we can to raise awareness of domestic violence, support victims and survivors, and hold offenders accountable. In the spirit of Domestic Violence Awareness Month, let's continue building the conversation about domestic violence and protect the people of Smith Falls from this horrible crime. Now therefore be resolved that I, Sean Panko, Mayor of the town of Smith Falls, do hereby proclaim October 2023 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in the town of Smith Falls, and encourage our residents to stand firmly with survivors, advocates, and community agencies to stop domestic violence in all its forms. Second proclamation relates to Rett Syndrome Awareness Month, October 2023. Whereas Rett syndrome is a rare neurodevelopmental condition that affects mainly females, 1 in 10,000 births, and is caused by a mutation in the X chromosome. Whereas individuals with Rett syndrome will lose some, if not most, acquired skills, including speech, gross motor skills, and fine motor skills. Some never develop the ability to walk or even talk. Whereas there is currently no cure, but advancements in treatment and research provide thousands of people with hope. And whereas Ontario Rett Syndrome Associations is a volunteer nonprofit charity for parents, caregivers, researchers, medical professionals, and other interested support agencies and individuals. And whereas the OSRA exists to ensure that children and adults with Rett syndrome are enabled to achieve their full potential and enjoy the highest quality of life within their community. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Sean Panko, Mayor of the Town of Smith Falls, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2023 is Rett Syndrome Awareness Month in the Town of Smith Falls. We have a few items of business to look after this evening. Our first is our consent agenda.
Excuse me,
Sorry.
I need to share something with you guys. When is a good time?
If you can speak to the clerk, she can put you on a future agenda. We're going to look, we receive. Yes,
No,
sorry.
I think my problem is like very imminent and timely.
Okay, we'll finish our agenda. We'll have an opportunity to speak to that.
Sorry?
I'll proceed through our agenda. We'll have an opportunity to speak with you after then.
But you'll let me speak.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, consent agenda. Clerk Costello.
Thank you. This evening on the consent agenda, there is a bylaw to establish and adopt the terms of reference for the Old Home Week Advisory Committee. My apologies, task force. We also have a motion coming forward for Old Home Week regarding the financial commitment of $1,500 from the Economic Development Tourism Department. We have a motion to adopt the Heritage House Museum Strategic Plan, and we also have a motion coming forward regarding the official plan update, themes, and directions.
Thank you. Would anyone like any item on the consent agenda pulled for further discussion? Seeing none, Councillor Quinn, you have the motion for the consent agenda.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Robinson, that the items in the consent report number 007-2023 be received from the clerk and received and adopted.
Thank you. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Our first motion is with Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Quinn, that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls appoint the following applicant to the Heritage House Museum Advisory Board for the remainder of the 2022 to 2026 term of council, or until new appointments are made via resolution. Ted Outerbridge.
Thank you. Any further discussion, Councillor Brennan?
No, we discussed this earlier, and we welcome Ted to the committee, and he's a valuable asset.
Thank you. It's moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Quinn, that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smith Falls appoint the following applicant to the Heritage House Museum Advisory Board for the remainder of the 2022-2026 term of council, or until new appointments are made via resolution. Ted Outerbridge. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Moving into our bylaws, Councillor McKenna.
Yes, Your Worship, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Robinson, that a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a development agreement with Farhad Khan and Resolve Hogue to implement the servicing conditions associated with the provisional approval of consent application B22-03. Be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. As moved by Councillor McKenna and seconded by Councillor Robinson, that a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a development agreement with Farhad Khan and Resolve Hogue to implement the servicing conditions associated with provisional approval of the consent application B22-03 be received, read a first time, and taken as read a second time. All in favor? That's carried. Discussion, please, Councillor.
Well, that motion is a really complicated way of saying that there's a duplex in our municipality that was at one point separate and on title when something happened behind the scenes, and on title the properties were merged. So the applicant is asking us to separate them again or sever them from each other. And with some minor conditions, council and staff are recommending that this go ahead.
Thank you. Any further discussion? May the third reading, please.
Certainly moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Robinson that a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a development agreement with Farrar Khan and Rizal Hope to implement the servicing conditions associated with the provisional approval of consent application B22-03 be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10478-2023.
Thank you. It's moved by Councillor McKenna and seconded by Councillor Robinson that a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a development agreement with Farhad Khan and Rizal Hook to implement the servicing conditions associated with the provisional approval of consent application B22-03 be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10478-2023. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Inquiries or announcements? Councillor Miller.
Thank you. So the Arts Council, again, is they're accepting applications for the Joyce Brennan Awards in honor of Councillor Brennan's mother, which recognize those who have contributed to the betterment of arts and culture in the area. So nominations can be emailed to smithsfallsarts@gmail.com. Tickets are also on sale now for the dinner and award night. It'll be held at the Legion on November the 4th, and tickets can be purchased here in town at the Craft Witch or in Perth at the Rito Candy Shop.
Thank you. Councillor Quinn.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I have a few things I'd like to announce this evening. One is the celebration of Forrest Davison on October the 21st from 1 till 3. This is at the Davison Bakery Courtyard. And this is celebrating what would have been his 100th birthday. So we want to tell the history of the Davison Bakery. So we're looking for anyone that has stories, memories, artifacts to get in touch with us, come out, help us celebrate. I definitely know his son's going to be there speaking, and we're hoping to have the Davison bread wagon on site. So it should be really interesting. There's a lot of history there to be told. I was at the Heritage House for their pizza night. It was excellent. I hope they do it again, because I'll put my name down and be there. It was wonderful. I was also at the fundraiser for Bailey Anderson. I want to tell you that was very, very successful, and she was very pleased with that. I was on Saturday, I went to the Lapine Residential Development. It was lovely, great building. My husband said he knew why he didn't go with me because I was there for 3 hours talking to people.
It was lovely, but it's way too expensive for people in Smith Falls.
Susie, please, if you wait to
It is.
I went there too.
It is a beautiful building, and there was hundreds of people there. It was amazing, the people that were there. The only other thing that I have to announce, and you will hear me talk about this again, is it is coming around to Christmas time, and we're getting ready for Christmas for the lonely seniors. And this is a project that we have going where last year we were able to give gifts to lonely seniors, and we put out 300 gifts. So we got to 300 people. I'm sure there's more out there, and we will work on getting that, but I just wanted to announce it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Miller has a confirmatory bylaw.
Thank you. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McGuire that a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting on the 15th and 11th days of September 2023 be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. It's moved by Councillor Miller and seconded by Councillor McGuire that a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting on the 15th and 11th days of September 2023 to receive, read a first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? Carried. Discussion, Councillor Miller.
This is a regular task of approving previous meeting minutes.
Third read, please.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McGuire that a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting on the 5th and 11th days of September 2023 be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10479-2023.
Thank you. It's moved by Councillor Miller, seconded by Councillor McGuire, that a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting on the 15th and 11th days of September 2023 be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10479-2023. All in favor? That's carried. And Councillor Robinson, you have the adjournment.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Quinn, that this council adjourn its proceedings at 6:50 PM and stand so adjourned until the next duly called meeting of council.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Robinson, seconded by Councillor Quinn, that this council adjourns proceedings at 6:48
You
PM.
can't adjourn it
And
until I have
stand so
my
adjourned until
chance.
the next duly called meeting of council. All in favor? You're adjourned. Sorry, you don't have the privilege